workout for January 10th is another yoga flow. I am loving doing these. So we're gonna definitely use a smartwatch timer. If you don't have that, it's free to download, or you're using some type of timer for your own, because we're gonna hold each pose for up to 20 seconds. You have 20 seconds on each of the 10 moves, but you also have transition time. So technically you're only holding each piece for about 15 seconds, and then you're transitioning to the next piece that takes up that time. Because of that, you can move really slow with your transitions too, which is obviously, an advanced piece. And instead of trying to go from, A to B, you're going through that process of getting to B, which is part of your time and part of your flow. So you might slow down as you do these rounds. So with the smartwatch timer, we're gonna do either 60 or 80 rounds on a Tabata timer. So you click on the Tabata timer, you set the work for 20 seconds, you set the rest to 0 seconds, and then the rounds are either 60 rounds, which is only 20 minutes of work, or 80 rounds, which is 27 minutes of work. So kind of depending on if you want to do 3 rounds or 4 rounds, and then obviously the timing. This one is a half moon flow, so we are going to use a chair. You're going to need either 2 chairs, if you have the space to put them at the top of your mat, to the left and to the right of your mat, or I have 1 chair that I'm just going to switch every time, just for the fact of space with this gigantic beam. But if you have 2 chairs, I would use that. This is high, but I'm going to be using the leg. So you might have a chair with the seat that's here, and that works, or you might be able to adjust. If you are really good at half moon, you might just use a yoga block, or you might use nothing at all, okay? So there's 10 pieces, and after you do all 10, you're gonna start right back and just keep going through. Once you do 2 rounds, that's left and right. So left is 10, right is 10, and then obviously we keep going. That's why the number of 60 and 80 rounds is so big. It looks daunting, but it's really not that bad. So I'm going to do, start with downward facing dog, which I'm going to be a little sideways so you guys can see me. So down dog is basically that plank distance, but up in a pike. My knees are bent, and I'm pressing my chest back so that my belly and quads might even touch, but I want to be as close to an A-frame as possible. Even if your hamstrings are loose, you're still going to bend your knees. So especially if you have tight hamstrings, your legs better be bent, all right? So, sorry, I forgot where we're from, that downward facing dog. I'm gonna do 3-legged down dog. So I'm gonna pick up my right leg first, 3-legged down dog. I can keep my hips square, I can open them up, I can take my leg over. It doesn't matter where this leg is, it's just for you. So you have 20 seconds to go from down dog to lifting that leg to maybe opening up. Maybe you're gonna play with it and move it around, but it's 3-legged down dog. Then I'm gonna come underneath for fallen triangle. So this is a little tricky, but my foot's gonna stick straight out. I'm gonna open up. It's almost like side plank. So you can adjust. If you notice, I had to move my feet around to make that work. So that's your fallen triangle. And then I'm gonna go back to 3-legged down dog. So back up. Again, straight leg, bent leg, hip closed, hip open, and then all the way back to, or all the way to a pyramid pose. So putting that foot in between my hands. If it doesn't make it there, you can pick it up and put it there. And then just a forward fold. Knee is slightly bent. If it's straight, that's okay, but most of us are pretty tight, so a little bit bent is nice. So that is your pyramid. And then from there, I'm going to crescent lunge. So I'm just gonna come up into my long lunge. Again, you might have to adjust your feet. I like to take my arms up and press my palms together, which makes me go into a little bit of an arch, which I desperately need that back opening. So crescent lunge, and then warrior 3. So after you hear that timer beep, you're gonna make your way to warrior 3, which is balancing on 1 leg in a T. My standing leg is bent, all right? And I'm lifting my leg and my hands up just like I'm in an arch. And then here's where I'm going into that half moon. So I'd have the chair on this side. So from warrior 3, and even if you did what I did where you had to adjust, just go back in. I'm gonna grab my chair, which is on the outside of that standing leg, and I'm gonna open up the hip. So if I put my hand on my hip over here, I'm gonna open up. The tricky thing with this is this foot. You have to keep it on its own side. If it's my left leg, you have to keep it over on the left. It wants to come over here, which is why people fall and why you have this chair here. Standing leg is bent. The knee is pointing forward. I'm looking down. More advanced would be looking up, but we're just gonna look down so we can keep our balance. So that's your half moon. And then I'm just gonna come into a forward fold. So keeping that leg up, this is needle pose, or standing splits. And then after that 20 seconds, I'm just gonna come into a forward fold, which I want you to let your head hang heavy, bend your knees, that's your forward fold. And then you're gonna go back to the down dog. So I'm gonna move this chair over here. I'll show you the same thing on the other side. So from that forward fold, you can either jump or just step back to down dog. I'm gonna do the other side, so this leg lifts up. So whatever leg I lift, my chair is on that side, so three-legged down dog. Then I'm gonna go into fallen triangle. So bringing that leg underneath me, I'm picking up my opposite hand. I'm gonna stick the leg out straight. This one happens to be bent, but I'm gonna eventually straighten them out. Like I said, it's a supported side plank. Then I'm gonna go all the way back to three-legged down dog. And you could also go to regular down dog, so if you needed like a break, I actually love downward facing dog. So again, from three-legged down dog, going to pyramid, so stepping in between my hands. I know you can't see it, but I was on my fingertips to give me some space to put that foot up there. Or if you put it up and it doesn't make it, fix it. Put it up there, adjust your hands and feet. Pyramid's a forward fold, so let your head hang heavy. Take that stretch. After 20 seconds, crescent lunge. Again, pressing your palms together, losing your balance. My leg is straight on this one, so unlike your working lunge, which would be here, I'm a little further back. My leg is relatively straight, meaning it still might have a pretty big bend if you're tight here. And then I'm as close to 90 degrees, I'm even a little high and tight as you can. So crescent lunge, and then warrior three. So, sorry, my glasses. So I'm gonna drag my back foot to help me with my balance, and then when I'm ready, I'm gonna lift up that leg. Again, standing leg is bent. I'm in as close to an arch as possible, so my chest is lifted. A lot of times this happens, people are like reaching to the floor. I call that like the wet noodle. Make sure you lift really high. And then I'm gonna, after 20 seconds, leg is on fire. I'm gonna grab this chair, which again is on the outside of me. Because if I fall this way, I've got my foot. If I fall that way, I got nothing. So hand on your hips, you can feel it. I'm going to open this hip, or basically put it on top of this leg. Technically, you're not opening this hip. Technically, you're opening this hip, but it makes more sense to think of it that way. This is my right leg. I'm gonna make sure it stays on the right side and it doesn't come over on the balancing beam, meaning my feet are not in a line. My feet stayed on those train tracks we sometimes talk about when we're balancing. So there's your half moon. You can take your arm up if you have a little bit better balance, or maybe you have balance where you went right from warrior three to half moon, which we sometimes do in class. I just almost fell. All right, then going through warrior three and then eventually making your way to standing splits or needle pose. In standing splits, it is a forward fold. My glute is active because I'm lifting up this leg, but everything else is just relaxing. So you don't have to be lifted up in that pose. From your needle pose, forward fold, bend your knees, rest your head, 20 seconds, and then you'll eventually step back to downward facing dog. So that's all the pieces. Like I said, rewrite them so they make sense to you. I didn't say it in this video, but one of my other videos, you should always rewrite the workout, maybe draw little stick figures so that it makes sense to you when you're going through. You'll do this 3 or 4 times, so eventually it'll make sense where you're going. I think that was it. Okay. All right, guys. Happy January 10th.